Tangrowth is one of the most underappreciated Pokemon of all time, and in the Gen 5 games, Tangrowth received a massive buff that led to it skyrocketing in competitive viability. Tangrowth is not only a great design that people don't talk about enough, it's one of the strongest defensive Pokemon in Gens 6 and 7 OU. Of all the new evolutions for past gen Pokemon introduced in Gen 4, Tangrowth might just be the most impressive. It's certainly a cut above the disappointing Dusknoir and Electivire. Why don't we highlight the often forgotten life and times of Tangrowth, its respectable competitive accolades, and what the future might hold for this strange monster made of green spaghetti. Before Tangrowth came into existence, Tangela was a single-stage Pokemon, released all the way back in the first Pokemon game. A strange little amalgamation of vines with eyeballs peeking out. What immediately stood out about Tangela back in the day to most players was its intelligent choice to wear shoes into combat. One of the first Pokemon in recorded history to understand the value of protective clothing, and a pioneer in that department alongside its friend Hitmonchan. In Gen 1, Tangela was better than you might expect, actually. Ranked in the respectable UU tier. This is because back in Gen 1, Special Attack and Special Defense were combined into one stat simply called Special. And Tangela was blessed with a decent 100 special stat. Tangela also had an above-average 115 base defense, and with good mixed bulk, it operated pretty well as a defensive Pokemon here. Even though it's slow, it has good utility, with Sleep Powder, Stun Spore, and even Bind, which in Gen 1 prevents the opponent from acting at all. However, in Gen 2, when the special stat was split into two different stats, Tangela was one of the Pokemon hit the hardest by this new mechanical change. Now, instead of being able to take special hits well, it was gifted with a new special defense stat of a mere base 40, which is dreadful. Without that great mixed bulk it had back in Gen 1, and with new grass types completely outclassing it in Gen 2 now, Tangela had a bit of a weird identity. What did this guy do that other grass types couldn't? It has low health, low speed, low special defense. None of its utility options are unique, and Tangela's identity felt tangled, jumbled up, confused. Tangela had an identity crisis at this time. He was in a very dark place, but when you reach rock bottom, there's nowhere to go but up. Tangela realized this, and he ventured forth out into the sun, basking in the sunlight, because in the next generation, Gen 3, they tried to give Tangela an incentive to go and get some sunlight by granting it the ability Chlorophyll. When Sunny Day is active, Tangela has double speed. It's a very good ability, and it would seem perhaps like a new way for Tangela to achieve things in competitive. The terrible tragedy of this, though, is that Tangela is not the only Pokemon that received Chlorophyll in Gen 3, and among them, it feels pretty weak. Exeggutor received this ability in Gen 3, and Exeggutor is a stronger special attacker. It has superior moveset options like Explosion and Stab Psychic. It's overall just superior. There's also Shiftry. Though Shiftry's not very good, it's still better than Tangela. It has Explosion as well. It has better stats as well. All that effort psyching himself up to go and get out into the world and see the sunlight, only to feel inferior among his peers yet again. Even with double speed in the sun, he is still too slow to keep up with his contemporaries. How tragic for Tangela. Tangela ended up in the unimpressive PU tier 2 generations in a row here. Something serious had to happen here. Tangela had to look deep inside of himself and evolve beyond his little ball of spaghetti vines with red shoes on. This is not powerful enough to keep up in the fantastical world of Pokemon. There's all sorts of powerful creatures here. You're a little ball of spaghetti. You're not good enough, Tangela. You must evolve. And that he did. In the very next generation, Tangela was blessed with an all-new evolution. The incredible and the spectacular Tangrowth. And I have always been fond of Tangrowth's visual design, I have to say. Somehow I feel as if Tangrowth looks more confident in himself in his new, larger form. Something about those eyes convey the growth that he has undergone, not only in name, but in literal bodily form, as he is much larger now. Tangela's eyes looked cowardly and meek and non-confident. Tangrowth looks contented. And I like his weird little extendy arms that are stretchy with red fingertips on them. It's a pretty creative creature design, I must say. It looks a little bit alien, but it also looks, I don't know, like a growth of vines that has become sentient. It's a cool guy. It's a cool guy. Tangrowth received significant stat increases. Its defense is even higher, now 10 points higher, 125. The biggest buff is to its HP, which is now base 100. Even though it still has a low special defense, that HP buff helps out massively for Tangrowth's general bulk. And with higher attack and special attack, Tangrowth also feels a little bit more directly threatening. They also gave Tangrowth a new ability. It still has chlorophyll as an option, but I think they realized that chlorophyll wasn't the best fit on this, and that it needed something different to lead more into its defensive identity, so they gave it the new ability Leaf Guard, which is also a Sun synergy, but this one grants a status immunity if Sun is active. Now, to be honest, I think they had the right idea here, but Leaf Guard is just not a very good or practical ability. Getting Sun on the field takes a lot of work. You gotta click Sunny Day somewhere. It's temporary in OU. And in Ubers, if you're running Groudon alongside this, the power level's too high up there for this to be any good, really, with the permanent Sun at your side. But with this stat increase, Tangrowth shot up to the UU tier, a respectable rise. And Tangrowth saw usage as a solid physical tank Pokemon. With its great defensive stats, and its always useful options of Sleep Powder and Stun Spore, as well as Synthesis to heal. It did a good job in this defensive role. It also helps that in Gen 4 the new moves Leaf Storm and Power Whip were released. With its newfound offensive prowess and these high power grass type attacks with stab boosts on them, Tangrowth could also hit surprisingly hard, and that certainly had its value as well. Other moves had options like Earthquake and Rock Slide, also found themselves more useful here with the higher attack stat to take advantage of them. But the ascension of Tangela and its new physical embodiment of its personal growth were not over yet. No, of course not. In Generation 5, Tangrowth received an absolutely enormous new buff. Tangrowth was blessed with the fantastic new ability, Regenerator. If you're familiar with competitive Pokemon, I'm sure you're aware that Regenerator is one of the best abilities you can get. On Switch Out, Regenerator restores 1/3 of your Pokemon's max HP instantaneously. It is the safest way to heal in the game, as you are completely out of harm's way as you are healing, not having to sit there and take damage or click a move such as Recover. Your healing is consistent, safe, and it gives you incredible longevity, and it's a perfect fit on a Pokemon like Tangrowth with such great bulk and utility. Now this is interesting because Tangrowth is technically ranked RU in Gen 5, which is a lower rank, but Tangrowth is a much more viable Pokemon in Gen 5 OU than it previously was. That seems a little contradictory. Keep in mind that the tiers are frozen here, so even if Tangrowth did rise significantly in usage, it would still be ranked RU. That's a quirk of these old gens sometimes. But Tangrowth with Regenerator is actually a good Pokemon in Gen 5 OU in some contexts. It sets itself apart from other Regenerator Pokemon like Amoonguss and Slowbro with its Mono Grass typing, and that's great in a world where Permanent Rain exists. It has higher physical defense than many of these Pokemon, and it has different utility moves. Knock Off being an important one for item removal, and that's one of its greatest strengths. Stun Spore. Your Stab Giga Drain actually hits pretty hard with your base special attack being decent. Hidden Power Ice is common because it hits Landorus, Therian, Gliscor, Garchomp. You also have Earthquake if you want to hit Heatran. That's useful coverage. Tangrowth matches up well against a lot of common Pokemon in Gen 5, like Landorus, Therian, Excadrill, Gliscor, Garchomp. Even if these guys toxic Tangrowth, Regenerator is enough to stomach being poisoned because your healing is so great and you can switch out so easily, resetting the poison ticker. Tangrowth is even pretty nice into Tyranitar. You're stomaching its physical attacks pretty well and threatening it with big grass stab. You get into Breloom, resisting its grass moves of course, and with high physical defense as well. Tangrowth also appreciates the new item Rocky Helmet, which is a pretty good fit on it. With a Rocky Helmet, Tangrowth's defensive switch-ins can deal a little bit of damage to the enemy, and You know, thanks to Regenerator, it's not as reliant on leftovers for its healing. It has this form of passive healing that is so fantastic. The Tangrowth with a Rocky Helmet, and all this great utility and all this good physical bulk, is a great Pokemon in Gen 5 OU. I think it's a bit underrated, in fact. Now, it does have some problems. I mean, with such low special defense, Tangrowth does suffer, even sometimes just from overwhelming water-type damage. Even though it resists water, a Specs Keldeo in the rain can still destroy you with Hydro Pump, and that's not fantastic. To have your Grass type be vulnerable to that. But this is still the foundation of an incredible Pokemon, and one that is much more viable in OU with this new option of Regenerator. This really rounded out Tangrowth, I think. It was exactly what it needed. Because Tangrowth previously relied on Synthesis for its healing, not a great healing move. It's weather dependent and has low PP, and you have to sit there clicking it like a bozo. With Regenerator, the Tangrowth puzzle felt like it had finally come together. I also haven't even mentioned the option of Leech Seed, which is something that sets it apart from other Regenerator Pokemon too, and is another great utility choice. In Gen 6, all of Tangela's prior efforts came together. This little wormy, viney creature who reached pure rock bottom, the pits of despair, who climbed out into the sunlight and finally was imbued with the gift of self-healing, the gift of self-love, finally had what it took, in its new Tangrowth form, to take on OU, the heavy hitters of competitive. Tangrowth in Gen 6 was ranked OU officially, and this was the height of its career. Tangrowth already had a lot of advantages that made it desirable competitively, but now Tangrowth benefited from some new buffs in Gen 6. In the Gen 6 games, the grass typing was buffed to now be immune to powder-based moves. So Tangrowth is immune to Sleep Powder, Stun Spore, etc. Most importantly, the move Spore it is now immune to, and that gives it way more defensive value, doesn't it? Grass typing has these great immunities associated with it. In Gen 6, I'm sure as you all know, the move Knockoff was also buffed massively. It was already good utility removing an item, but now it also dealt considerable damage. Knockoff was buffed to have 65 base power, increased from the previous 20, has the effect of dealing 1.5x damage while it's knocking off an item. The damage output of Knockoff means that it can be used as dark coverage and item removal in one, which is incredibly valuable. And Tangrowth, with its decent attack stat and the defensive prowess to take advantage of the utility of Knockoff provides, this buff was considerable for it. Now, something I didn't touch on when talking about Gen 5 is that in Gen 5, sleep moves are banned from being used. This is because sleep is more powerful in Gen 5, due to the fact that when you switch out, the sleep counter does not reset, meaning a slept Pokemon usually remains slept the whole game. It's very difficult to wake up. Sleep was not always banned in Gen 5, it's a fairly recent change in relative terms, but it still impacts Tangrowth's presence in that format. It can't use its important option of Sleep Powder. In Gen 6, though, Tangrowth can use Sleep Powder. Sleep is not banned here, and Sleep Powder is a significant option. Tangrowth has no problem at all finding defensive entry points, and once it does, it's got the capacity to put something to bed, preventing them from acting. It's an incredible amount of value and momentum to generate. It can do that, and it can knock off items, and it can Leech Seed, and it can take advantage of all this good coverage, and it also hits pretty hard with its good attacking stats for a defensive Pokemon, allowing it to run Hidden Power types that are useful. Hidden Power Fire is a great one to hit Ferrothorn. Hidden Power Ice is great to hit Landorus, Therian, and Garchomp. And Tangrowth also benefited in Gen 6 from the introduction of a brand new item that was actually a great fit on this Pokemon. For a long time, Tangrowth's greatest downfall has been its low special defense, but this new item is able to patch up that weakness. The Assault Vest is an item that grants the holder 1.5x special defense, the cost of preventing it from using utility moves. It can only use damaging moves with the Assault Vest equipped. Now, this is sort of bad for Tangrowth, as with an Assault Vest equipped, it can't use the nice options of Sleep Powder or Leech Seed that it likes to use on its Rocky Helmet sets, but at the same time, the incredible increase in bulk that Tangrowth receives with special defense investment plus the Assault Vest means it turns into an unbelievable mixed wall. Regenerator Pokemon usually appreciate Assault Vest because they are actually able to heal with an Assault Vest on. Assault Vest usually prevents healing from happening, but if your healing just happens when you switch, very convenient for you, isn't it? And Tangrowth can function pretty well without any status moves. I mean, Knockoff is a utility move that is an attack. You can remove an item, which is a great utility effect, and that's still an attack. It's still legal to use with Assault Vest. And Tangrowth can fill the rest of its move pool with miscellaneous good attacks. Leaf Storm or Giga Drain are nice for Grass Stab. Leaf Storm if you want to just hit as hard as possible with a high power move. Giga Drain if you want more reliable grass damage that doesn't nerf your special attack and also heals you, which has its value. Earthquake is great and allows you to threaten Heatran and Excadrill and other steel types. And then Hidden Power is always really nice, as it is on the other set. Ice hits Landorus, Therian, Dragonite, Garchomp, Gliscor. Fire hits Ferrothorn, Scizor and Mega Scizor, and various other things, of course. The Assault Vest was perfect for Tangrowth, and is one of the best Assault Vest Pokemon in this format. Even though its utility is more limited, it has the move pool to function with this Assault Vest, and the enhanced bulk just makes it so much more consistent. Now, for a lot of Pokemon, the transition from Gen 6 to 7 was a rough one. Gen 7 introduced a pretty significant amount of power creep. The Ultra Beasts were added, which are very powerful new Pokemon. The Tapus were added, and they completely changed the metagame and were absolutely central to OU. Most notably of all, Z moves were introduced, the new generational mechanic of Sun and Moon. Massive high-power nukes that could completely eliminate would-be checks to certain things. You'd think Tangrowth might struggle in this new environment, but actually the opposite thing happened here. Tangrowth thrived in this new environment. This metagame needed a reliable mixed defensive Pokemon that could also output a bit of damage at the same time. It can get a bit of progress made, it has decently hard-hitting moves and good coverage. That's exactly what Tangrowth is. With Regenerator and its great defenses, Tangrowth is bulky enough to withstand the terrors of the Gen 7 metagame. It's actually one of the few things here that has a reliable amount of longevity, and also isn't completely passive like some other walls that have similar longevity. Tangrowth finds an incredible middle point, and actually feels quite at home in the Gen 7 OU format. An Assault Vest Tangrowth is actually one of the best answers to the new public enemy number 1 of Gen 7 OU, Ash Greninja. Ash Greninja commonly carries a Choice Specs. Tangrowth easily stomachs Choice Specs Hydro Pump and threatens to strike back with lethal force. Although they can run Ice Beam, you can check their lock-in and heal with Regenerator to pretty nicely deal with Ash Greninja. At least act as a pretty damn reliable line of defense against it. Tangrowth also matches up very well against the very popular new Tapu Koko. You of course resist Electric and commonly carry Earthquake, which threatens it considerably. Tangrowth has started carrying Sludge Bomb in Gen 7. Poison coverage is nice in a world where Fairy types only rise and rise. The poison chance is good, and in particular, Sludge Bomb does considerable damage to Tapu Bulu, who is ×4 weak to poison. You also hit Tapu Lele and Koko pretty nicely with this move as well. I always found Tangrowth to be a really balanced and fun Regenerator Pokemon. It's an ability that can feel frustrating if given to the wrong Pokemon, but Tangrowth always felt fair to me. Mono Grass is one of those typings that is good and bad at the same time. Ground resistance is always great, water resistance is always great. I think ground resistance is probably the best thing about it, just because you can come in nicely on Landorus Therian and Excadrill, Garchomp. Every meta has bulky ground types. And it's always nice to just be able to switch in against them and threaten them directly as well with Grass Stab. At the same time though, grass types are weak to a lot, so mono grass typing has significant shortcomings. I also think that Tangrowth's move pool is good, but not ridiculous. It has the good options of Sleep Powder and Stun Spore for utility, Toxic, which, I mean, many things get, but it can use well. It's got Knockoff, and it's got some good attacks, but it doesn't have so many options that it feels frustrating or overwhelming, in my opinion. And the fact that it has low special defense means that the Assault Vest choice is a bit of a trade-off. You're sacrificing some utility to fill the gap in special bulk. which is a considerable trade-off. You gain a lot, but you lose a lot at the same time. I think Tangrowth's presence in Gen 6 and 7 is a positive one. It's a Pokemon that brings some stability to a metagame, particularly Gen 7, that can be a bit chaotic. Tangrowth provides some reprieve from the insanity a little bit. In the next generation, Gen 8, Tangrowth did fall down to UU, and there's a few reasons you can point to for this drop-off. Tangrowth was pretty adversely affected by the removal of Hidden Power from the games in Gen 8. Hidden Power, Fire, and Ice were important options for it that allowed it to really threaten common defensive Pokemon. Without these options, Tangrowth finds itself sometimes struggling to pick a good move on an Assault Vest set. Those Hidden Powers really rounded out the Assault Vest sets, and without them, feels like you're not threatening enough to those common Pokemon. For this reason, Assault Vest sets kind of fell off. Rocky Helmet was preferred, so it could leverage your bulk for a bit of damage against the enemy. And it opened up those options of Sleep Powder and Stun Spore, which felt more important now, didn't they? Heavy Duty Boots was another nice new alternative for Tangrowth, allowing it to be completely immune to hazards. A great choice on many Regenerator Pokemon. It's the one way to actually pressure Regenerator Pokemon well. With Boots, you can patch up that weakness. The meta surrounding Tangrowth is also kind of good and bad for it in Gen 8. Probably the worst new trend for Tangrowth is that Weavile rose massively in Gen 8, getting buffed by the new option of Triple Axle and the addition of Heavy Duty Boots. Weavile destroys Tangrowth. Tangrowth is also not fond of Buzzwole, partially because he looks like a bit of an abomination and a bit of a freak, but also because it's got Bug-type damage, which is super effective. That's no good. Galarian Zapdos is also occasionally used in this format, and it has big flying-type attacks. That's not fun either. But Tangrowth does match up well against Zeraora, who is a bit of a new superstar in Gen 8. A physical electric-type attacker, Tangrowth resists its Stab Plasma Fist, and also is physically bulky enough to stomach the coverage of Ice Punch. Tangrowth matches up well against Katana, especially now that Katana can no longer use Z-moves to power through things that are supposed to check it. Without Z-moves at its disposal, Katana kind of thuds into the physically defensive Tangrowth, who resists grass and generally has enough physical bulk to withstand it. Urshifu Rapid Strike is also a new member of the metagame, a water-type physical attacker, which Tangrowth matches up well against for clear reasons. So it's a bit of good and bad here. Another thing that kind of sucked for Tangrowth was the rise of Future Sight in Gen 8. Future Sight is a psychic move with really high power that hits in the future. It hits 2 turns after being used. And this is a great way to break, because you sort of queue up this attack that's going to happen in the future, making it awkward for the enemy. They know it's coming and they want to switch into a type that resists it, but by restricting what they're able to switch in against, you can punish them for this. Tangrowth really sucks at coming in on Future Sight because it's a big neutral special attack, and it has low special defense, and it can't afford to run Assault Vest as much here. So it is really prone to getting beaten down by the Future Sight, because you could Future Sight, then go to something that Tangrowth walls, and they can't exactly go to Tangrowth or they're going to take the big Future Sight, right? This is a problem for Tangrowth, and it's a pretty reliable way to power through the guy. All that being said, though, a UU ranking doesn't necessarily mean Tangrowth is terrible in OU by any means. In fact, it's still pretty damn solid in my opinion. Those positive matchups against ground types are always just universally great. Landorus Theory and Garchomp have not gone anywhere. Plus all those positive matchups I just mentioned, like Zeraora, Urshifu, Katana. Tangrowth also has some new technology up its sleeve. Some players started running Choice Specs Tangrowth with a more hit-and-run approach. It's still really defensively bulky just with its typing and stats alone, so just allowing it to hit harder with its one attack it can click while it's in goes a long way. It's a good way to lure in things and deal unexpectedly high damage. It's actually a pretty fun set, isn't it? A Choice Specs Tangrowth Leaf Storm goes pretty crazy, and it's nice to have a special attacking wall breaker like this that has longevity from Regenerator, and can keep coming in and clicking a move and exiting and stick around for a while and be a bit annoying like that. I think Gen 8 Tangrowth is still valid. I value it. I believe it to be a smart Pokemon, and I think it still firmly sets itself apart from other Regenerator users. Tangrowth is nothing if not unique, isn't it? And Gen 8 is a metagame where a lot of different variety is possible in the metagame. The Tangrowth certainly has a place here. Absolutely it does. In Gen 9, the cowards over at Game Freak went and removed Tangrowth from the game, the bastards. How could you? Absolute cowards, honestly. Do we think that Tangrowth would fare alright in the Gen 9 metagame? It's an interesting question. Maybe Tangrowth would be appreciated in this metagame, to be honest. Another good defensive Pokemon can't hurt here. I think that one matchup Tangrowth would really help against is Ogerpon Wellspring. Ogerpon Wellspring has been a real problem Pokemon in Tangrowth with its high physical bulk and grass typing, as well as actual ways to threaten it with Sludge Bomb and probably Rocky Helmet. Tangrowth would help a lot here. Tangrowth would help a lot. It would also match up generally well against the bulky ground types that are ever present in every format. Great Tusk and Iron Treads are the big ones of Gen 9, and Tangrowth would certainly be appreciated there, wouldn't it? I think Tangrowth would also be kind of nice against defensive teams. I mean, it's pretty good against some of the new defensive superstars of Gen 9 that we can think of, like Dondozo, Alomomola, Primarina. And now that I think about it, wouldn't Tangrowth be alright against Iron Valiant? Iron Valiant is a strong Pokemon, but Tangrowth has the bulk. And Iron Valiant doesn't really carry any coverage super effective against grass, usually. The Tangrowth would be able to switch in against it and threaten it nicely with Sludge Bomb. Wouldn't Tangrowth also be pretty nice into Raging Bolt? Maybe with an Assault Vest set? That one I don't know, because Raging Bolt is a pretty overwhelming Pokemon with booster energy, but you would have the electric resistance. With an Assault Vest, you might be able to stomach the dragon moves, and you have Earthquake, which hits it well. Maybe it could help. It could at least help in the matchup, even if it's not a hard counter. Tangrowth would certainly absolutely hate Pecharunt. Tangrowth and Pecharunt would be at each other's throats, trying to fight one another to the death. The rise of Moltres is terrible news for Tangrowth. I believe the rise of Scizor is also terrible news for Tangrowth in a world without HP Fire. Tangrowth would despise Galarian Slowking, goodness gracious. It would be able to Earthquake it, but I don't think that 1v1 would go well for Tangrowth regardless. Galarian Weezing's rise is kind of a disaster for Tangrowth too, isn't it? What with neutralizing gas, preventing Regenerator from working, plus Sludge Bomb to threaten it directly? That's terrible news. But I think Tangrowth would be pretty good in Gen 9 OU. It might not be ranked in OU, but it would be viable, certainly, I think. We've seen Hydrapple with its occasional use, and it's a comparable Pokemon, I think. A Grass type with Regenerator. It's Grass Dragon type, has different options, but Tangrowth is pretty comparable to this, and Tangrowth sets itself apart with knockoff access, which is considerable. The lack of Sleep Powder in Gen 9 would be terrible. Sleep is universally banned in Gen 9. And the lack of Hidden Power still hurts. You're worse at threatening Gliscor and Landorus Therian. Gliscor is more important to threaten than ever, being everywhere in Gen 9 OU. But I think at least you have the big Leaf Storm to hit those. And what's great for Tangrowth in this potential world, this fantasy world I'm inventing where it exists in Gen 9, is that Ferrothorn doesn't exist here. And without Ferrothorn to just come in and punish it to high heaven, Tangrowth would have a lot more breathing room. Ferrothorn also takes away some of the space of the bulky grass type role, taking Tangrowth's job a little bit. So Tangrowth appreciates, or would appreciate, Ferrothorn not existing quite a lot, especially because it really relied on Hidden Power to hit Ferrothorn. Now that's less of a problem, it would seem. I have always found Tangrowth to be really underappreciated. I think it's a great design all around. It's a rare, fair-feeling Regenerator Pokemon. That's a hard thing to pull off in my opinion. Regenerator can be a frustrating ability, but Tangrowth, I think, rides the line very well. With its Mono-Grass typing, and its set of options, and its stats that are good and bad at the same time. It feels balanced. And I like when a balanced Pokemon still finds itself functional in a chaotic metagame. Gen 7 especially, it's a very chaotic metagame, but Tangrowth is viable anyway. And it's not an overpowered Pokemon matching the ridiculousness of some of Gen 7's top threats. It's just a balanced guy that's really solid. And this is the kind of Pokemon that enhances metagames, brings stability, brings a bit of order to the chaos. I think it's a shame that this guy is not in Gen 9. I guess it's not a particularly popular Pokemon. Even though it has its place in OU, I never see anyone talk about Tangrowth very much. It doesn't seem very beloved, but I think it should be, because everything about it is cool and well thought out and fun. Tangela in the early games was a weird Pokemon. It didn't have much of an identity, and they saw that, and they gave it an identity. They made an evolution for it, and they kept iterating on that evolution until it started to function competitively. And I think that's cool. I think they should do stuff like that more often. They often try to and fail, but Tangrowth was a successful example of them breathing new life into a weird Pokemon with an identity crisis. Tangela undergoing personal growth. And growing hands, and hands are very useful. Hands allow you to knock off items and such. The moral of this story is that on the battlefield, having hands is damn useful. To grasp different things, such as a weapon. I mean, think about the gorilla, very powerful animal, it's got hands. It can grab your skull and throw you at the tree or something like that. Whereas look at the emu, it's a stupid animal that doesn't have any hands. What do you guys think of Tangrowth? Cool Pokemon, stupid Pokemon? Do you think it's an improvement over the design of Tangela, who is much smaller and doesn't have any hands? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And thank you very much for watching.